I believe. Barb Moormeyer, am I pronouncing your name correctly?
Yeah, I'd like to know what you will, what you can or will do to stop the earmarks and the pork spending that we have rampant.
Well, I oppose the earmarks, and earmarks are a problem, but when you look at the total spending, they're a small part of the problem. They're a problem because they're symbolic more. But we need to have change the legislative process when it comes to budgeting and appropriations. It needs to be an open, transparent process. And we can't have leadership dropping amendments in the bills on the floor at the last minute, or congressman, whoever, the chairman, don't know what's in it. You know, when Nancy Pelosi said we got to pass the health care bill to find out what's in it, that was just bizarre to me. We need to take these budget bills, we need to break them up, not these big, huge bills, because one trick that they do in Congress is nobody wants, well, most people, I guess that's because it should be an exception, don't want to fund the troops, okay? So when they have to pass appropriations to fund the troops, then they'll Christmas tree it up, put all these other ornaments, so-called ornaments on it and everything else, so it makes it tough to vote the bill when you're not going to fund the troops, especially when they wait to the last minute where the troops got to have the funding. So we need to break those bills up and hear them in the legislative process, the committee process, in an open, transparent way, in the light of day, okay? And let everything go through the process. Because I don't think there's anybody in the state of Ohio that thinks that our gas tax dollars that go for highways and roads and bridges, and of course Strickland wants to go for passenger rail, which is really crazy, don't want some of that money or most of it to come back to fund our highways, you know, build or repair our highways and bridges and all that. And so, but there's a process that goes through, and, you know, it's called the track process, and the Department of Highways, ODOT puts in what the needs and assessments, and goes through that track process. That's an open, transparent process with the committee hearings. Well, the problem with earmarks is Congress people will just put something in, nobody knows it doesn't go through the committee process, it's not an open process, and then you get this boondoggle spending, and then what's even more abuse about the earmark process is when they put something in there that's a payback or a favor, which apparently happens. That doesn't happen. That doesn't happen in Columbus that I know of. It doesn't happen. So this process in Congress is totally different, and we need to have let the committee, I call it the legislative process, the committee function. And one problem in Congress right now, the legislative process is broken and it's corrupt. And I don't have time to give you examples, but we need to let the committees function, where people come in and testify, you know, stakeholders like we do in Columbus, and you have an open process and you know what's in those bills. And also, when a bill gets to the floor, it doesn't get voted on before it comes to the floor without having 72 hours or whatever. And that's in our Pledge to America, some of those changes. And so the American people have a chance to know what it is. Plus, our representatives have a chance to know what's in the bill.
I'm absolutely opposed to earmarks, period. We do need to have a different process, and the process needs to be, well, first of all, we need to eliminate a lot of the spending by eliminating a lot of the money that we spend things on. Department of Education, you know, I've already talked about that, and there's so many others, you know, the Department of Energy, even the Department of Agriculture. It has so many programs in there, you know, subsidies that are going to people who are, for not raising crops, for example, and things like this. Just such wasteful spending. So the first focus really needs to be on getting the government back into its constitutional limits. And that's going to be a long process to get there. But in the meantime, what we need to do is not send not look at a proposed budget as a big wad of money, but start with what the needs of the federal government are. Start right there. And then let that be the determination of what the annual budget is going to be. If things such as, you know, an actual war that was declared and et cetera comes up, you know, happens, then that has to be debated along the way. But this money is appropriated. It's already sitting there. You know, the president proposes a budget, and it's like, you need this amount of money, and then they try to pick away you know, what they can get out of it for their districts, et cetera. It's just the whole nature of the earmark thing is. No, see, what I'd want to do, I'd want to know, for example, where we stand on our military readiness. And I would want to know, you know, what the history of the spending has been for the past X number of years. I'd want to know what our plans are for the future as far as defense projects, et cetera. And that's the defense budget. It's based on that. You know, the threat assessment, all these things go into those things. And with each other department in the federal government, make those assessments. I mean, Congress, do your job and start making those assessments. You know, don't just assume that because we have a department or something that they say, oh, we need, you know, $120 billion. You know, no, maybe you don't. Maybe you don't even need to be here. And that's where we need to start. You know, as far as the earmark, the whole earmark program is, it's like the first little piggy to the trough. That's where the money ends up going. And the more powerful that little piggy happens to be is that's where the money goes. That's where the district ends up going. The money ends up going to. That has to be eliminated. That whole idea of doing that has to be eliminated. It wouldn't work at home. When I had, you know, my kids were young, I had 6 kids. They all come to me with their budget. You know, that wouldn't work out too well. And so, of course, they didn't. I didn't have much to dole out anyway. But you kind of have to look at the federal government the same way. I mean, we run, most of us run our families on a reasonably tight budget, and we have to. And there's no room for earmarks at home. Thank you, Dan.
Okay, that concludes the audience participation portion of the evening. This time, each candidate is going to have 5 minutes wrap up to declare, you know, why they're running again and why you should vote for them. And after that, Dan's going to close.
I hate wrapping up because I could sit here all night and just sit and talk. Because I know that there's a lot of concerns out here maybe people didn't want to bring up, or, you know, might want to go into a little more depth on, et cetera, et cetera. What I've enjoyed the most about, but what I liked the most in the campaign process is open forums, you know, sort of the town hall meeting. I've gone and spoke to organizations, groups, and they would say, we're going to have an hour-long meeting. Would you come down and speak? And I go down and speak for 2.5 hours. Because they have a lot of things they want to talk about, and I want to hear about it. I want them to know where I stand on things. And then, you know, they will decide whether I'm qualified or worthy or however you want to assess it to be their representative in Congress. But I could just discuss things all night long, a lot of issues that haven't even been brought up here tonight. But this is sort of the end of the campaign trail. This is our last event that the senator and I will be engaged in together. And of course, Congressman Space bailed out on us yesterday. I haven't been out here looking for reasons to tell people why to vote for me. I've been out here in my limited capacity. I don't have a huge machine behind me. I've got no staff other than my daughter. Have to do, well, everything that I've had to do has been pretty much done on my own. The travel, the making the connections, the contacting folks and all that. But I haven't been trying to tell people that here's why you should vote for me. I've been trying to put out there what the problems in this country are, and to let most people who I've run across during this campaign know that I understand what these issues are, not really even issues, because to me it's all about principles. And the feedback that I get is that, yeah, Mr. Sutton, you're right. You know, because that's what most folks are thinking about. Everybody's talking about, you know, jobs, jobs, jobs. And to me, it's principles, principles, principles. Everything else happens like it should if we get back to the fundamental principles. And I've simply gone out and told people what I thought, how I've arrived at my conclusions on things. And it's been fairly well received. I don't know what that'll end up looking like, the ballot box. What I've tried to stress is that there's two fundamental things. Even if you don't feel that you know that much about the Constitution or founding principles, and et cetera, et cetera. I know there's a lot of folks in this room that do, and I'm very happy for that. But there's two primary things that you can keep in mind when it comes to your people in Congress and passing legislation. Number one, if it makes the federal government, if it increases the size of the power of the federal government, it can't possibly be constitutional because the federal government is limited. Unless, of course, it was to be an amendment to add an additional power, but I can guarantee you we don't need any more power up there. That's number one, is just to understand that basic principle. And the other thing is if it infringes upon your unalienable rights, any of them. And if it does, it can't possibly be constitutional. As a congressman, that's the number one thing to me that is my responsibility, is to sit down when legislation were to come across my desk to find out, number one, if it is constitutional. Because if it's not, don't waste the people of my district's time with this. There are other things that we can push on to. It drives me almost insane to watch the Congress. I watch C-SPAN a lot, but they vote on giving somebody an award for winning a football game, and there's like hours and hours of debate. We got all these problems here in this country. Shut up. Who cares about the football team? Rah, rah, you won, okay? Let's get this country back in shape. And the only way we're going to do that is following the U.S. Constitution. And it really isn't. I'm no constitutional scholar. Can't even speak. And I know there's a gentleman in this room who I admire for his knowledge of the Constitution. And there's several people like that. But let me tell you this, even though I'm not a scholar, I can read. And I've done a whole bunch of it, not just during this campaign, but back when I was homeschooling my now 24-year-old when she was in the 6th grade. We talked Constitution. We talked principles. We talked about our country. That's, my time is up.